sudden they're slowing down at a green light. And then as soon as it turns yellow, they take off, hoping that it's going to be red as they're going through the intersection, and they want to see whether or not someone blows through it with them.
You were featured on A&E's show Undercover, Caught on Tape. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I guess it's been a couple of years now. Some folks from A&E reached out to DEA, retired DEA folks, and says, "Hey, anybody have any good cases with video?" And of course I did, and I had some video and went through a process with them, and 3 or 4 phone calls and interviews, and they decided to feature it on episode 6. So season 1, episode 6 of Undercover, Caught on Tape. So this was an investigation that I initiated back in Arkansas, 22 years ago. It was a long time ago. And I had a target who was selling both methamphetamine and marijuana. And meth was really hot and heavy. Just like in Missouri, it was king, right? It was everywhere. And we were starting to see a lot more of the crystal meth, a lot more of the meth that was a lot more potent than the stuff that these little tiny labs could produce, because they could produce very little, just weak, and we'd just get inundated with those labs. So as the cartels took over methamphetamine production, we were starting to see this dope, and we were paying a lot of money for it. We were paying $1,800 for like an ounce of meth, which was crazy when you think about what it's worth now, which I'll go ahead and tell you, it's about $750 on the border for a pound, not an ounce, but a pound of meth. So, but because he was selling multi ounces, that was a big deal. I absolutely knew he had to be hooked into something good. So I was really pursuing the methamphetamine angle of this investigation, but the marijuana part really, unbeknownst to me, really was taken off. He didn't speak a lick of Spanish, but he went into Mexico with a laptop, and on the laptop he wrote, "My name is so and so, and I'm a drug trafficker," and I'm paraphrasing here, but and I'm looking for a source of supply for marijuana. Boop, and he goes into some crude program on the that translates that into Spanish. But he goes into a bar, to a shady area in Mexico, and he starts showing this note to people, and how he did not get killed or ripped off, I don't know, because it worked. It worked. He actually met some low-level members of a cartel that were like, "Yeah, what do you want?" And he established a relationship with them, and it was a family business. He had a 80-some-year-old grandma that would go down to the valley, South Texas area, and she'd pick up these loads of marijuana, and then they would take them back. And Arkansas, Tennessee, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, just pretty much the Midwest and the North. They just had a pretty big Ohio. I say Ohio, yeah. They were going out east as well, and they started just bringing back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds of weed. Well, this particular drug trafficker was getting robbed a lot. So one of the things that you learn in drug enforcement is that there's a lot of assets in marijuana, like a lot. Like some of the biggest assets we've ever seized have been marijuana traffickers. Meth people are just tweaking, paranoid. Not that can't be big money in that, but marijuana assets are. So there are people out there, there are criminals out there who rob other drug traffickers, literally. So I find out you're a drug trafficker, I rob you of your cash. What are you going to do? You're going to call the police? $100,000 that I made from selling drugs has just been robbed. No, you're probably not going to do that, right? That's why a lot of them carry guns, is to protect themselves from these types of things. Well, he didn't have any muscle. He was kind of weak when it came to that, and he was getting robbed a lot. And someone so because of that, he was growing in debt to the traffickers, high-level traffickers. So they were still what we call fronting the dope to him. So what they would do is, basically it's consignment. So they would give him the drugs, he would sell them, And then he would take that money and pay them whatever agreed upon price for the drugs, and then he would keep the profit, right? That happens a lot in the drug world as well, fronting the dope, buying it on consignment. So they were continuing to work with him, but his debt with them was growing because his money that he was supposed to give them back he was getting robbed. So now, instead of paying him, let's say it was $1,000 a pound, just for even numbers. Now it was, maybe $2,000 a pound or $3,000 a pound, because he had to make up the money he had lost. Well, eventually got to the point where it was absurd. I mean, he just couldn't keep up. So they were really putting a lot of pressure on him. At the same time, and I didn't even know about all this at the time. Like I said, my interest was completely methamphetamine. So at the same time, I'm working this meth case, and I'm doing what we call a historical conspiracy case. So I am literally pulling up witnesses. I'm trying to collaborate, the statements they give me, and I make no secret about it, right? I mean, if I knew that you were an associate with him, I'd bring you in, or I'd come knock on your door, and I would start asking you questions. Well, some of these people would cooperate, and some of them wouldn't. Well, what do you think they did when they didn't? They'd call him up and say, "Hey, DEA just knocked on my door. They're asking questions about you." Well, he was very paranoid, and he thought we were going to arrest him. Now, I was trying to develop that case, but I didn't have the probable cause. I didn't have enough for the U.S. Attorney's Office we couldn't indict him. We were building that case, but he didn't know all this. He takes off and he's running. So now he's trying to stay under the radar from me and from the DEA, and also continue his criminal enterprise because he was owing the cartel more and more money. Well, it got to the point where they sent a couple people up to kill him, because he was in so much debt. And but no one can find him. So at the same time, someone very close to him, and this is featured in the A&E show, gets a knock on the door, and they're looking for him. And this person doesn't know where he is. Prior to that knock on the door, there was another knock on the door like a couple weeks prior, and it was another robbery. But this time there was a baby involved. It was a female, and she was holding a baby. And I tried to interview her, and she told me to go pound sand. She had no interest. And they came to the door, and they ended up pistol whipping her and stealing a couple $100,000 in cash. Now, fast forward a couple weeks, I don't remember the exact time period, cartel members came knocking on someone's door, and it was actually the same female, but in the show, we made it. I'm disclosing this now. We made it a guy to protect who the girl was. Not that anyone could figure this out, but I hope I'm not confusing anyone right now or confusing you. But anyway, so a couple weeks later, another knock on the door. It's the cartel members looking for him to kill him because he is in debt. Either pay me now or you're dying. Well, that obviously stirred some concern, right? Somebody looking to kill someone close to you, or someone one of your criminal associates. And I got a phone call from this person, and she you could tell she was scared to her core. Getting pistol whipped was bad, but it was kind of part of doing business, right? This scared them, absolutely scared them. And I said, "Here's my phone, or you have my phone number, obviously. Give it to the bad guys." Because one of the things they did was they said, "Hey, here's a phone number. If you see him, you better call or you're next." So I said, "Give him my number. Don't tell him who I am. Just give him my number." And sure enough, within an hour, I get a phone call from a guy, didn't speak a lick of English. And at the time, I couldn't understand what he was saying. So I ended up talking to his wife, who was translating for us. And she says, "We're looking for this guy. Where is he?" And I said, "I'm looking for him too. He's my source of supply, and I can't find him anymore. I want to cut him out, and can I deal directly with you?" And I didn't say that, I didn't say all of that on that first phone call, but I basically kind of alluded to that, right? Mm-hmm. And we end up developing this relationship over the phone over the next couple of weeks, several phone calls, where they truly believed that he was my source. And just like for him, he was out in the wind, right?
Mhm.
And I have a criminal network. I have customers. And I said, let's just cut him out of and this happens quite a bit in the drug business. If I know who your source is and I can cut you out, well, that's going to save me money, So I say, let's just cut him out. And of course they told me, well, if you find him, let us know and we'll give you a piece of it because we want to kill him. He owes us a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, that's fine. I'm more interested in, developing a source of supply. Somebody steady, let's remove him. So ultimately, they bid off on it, and we end up deciding on a meet. They wanted me to come down to Mexico. I wouldn't do that. We end up meeting outside of Dallas, Texas, in a hotel room. And of course, our decision was is we were going to go ahead and uh, take these folks off, and assuming that everything went to as planned. So the agreement was that they would bring a couple 100 pounds of marijuana to the meeting and I would purchase that, and everything went well, then I would start buying, a couple 1,000 pounds or whatever order I wanted. They made it clear that they could fulfill anything that I needed. Um, so I'm in a hotel room outside of Dallas, Texas. I had a helicopter or a fixed airplane above us. We had a SWAT team outside, room next door. And then you'll see some footage on the A&E special of me talking to them. They wanted me to come with them, trip to their stash house, where they alleged they had the drugs, and of course I wouldn't do that. So we end up showing them the money. You never bring money to a dope deal, not that type of money. If I'm buying a dime bag or an ounce of coke, then that's one thing. But we're talking several $1,000s, right? So my partner, he ends up coming to the scene, and he actually, the way we did it, we had cash in a duffel bag sitting in the passenger seat of this truck, and he had his foot on the brake, and he rolled down the window, and we all came out and we looked at it, and once they saw the money, he took off, and everything changed. I mean, everything changed. There was in the show, it seems like everything happened pretty fast, but we were in that room for, I don't know, at least an hour, if not longer, just back and forth. They wanted me to come with them, I no, they wanted me to give them the money. No, I controlled every aspect of our transaction, at least I wanted to. And once they saw the money, they knew I was real. That, I wasn't just, hey, give me the marijuana, I'm going to run, right? So, and this is what happens. People see the money and they get greedy and they make dumb decisions. And that's exactly what they did. They got greedy. And so once they saw the money, they're like, yeah, absolutely. And let's figure this out now. And the way we had planned is we gave them a vehicle. Of course, we had kill switches in it and GPSs, and it was being monitored by air surveillance. And they took it, and we watched them take it to a stash house in Dallas and load it with marijuana, big duffel bags full of marijuana. And then they brought it back. And once they got it back to the hotel, I went and inspected it, and we had a way for me to alert. I was wearing wires, and I had a way for me to verbally and non-verbally alert that the marijuana was there. And then the SWAT sprung into action and ended up arresting me and the two traffickers that showed up. It was August uh, in Texas. And I don't know if you've ever been in Texas in August, but it's pretty hot. So I'm laying on the hot pavement with handcuffs on. And of course, I'm looking at them like, you set me up, and they're looking at me with a lot of confusion. And it was fun. It's funny. From there, we end up executing several warrants. The house that we watched them pick up the dope from, and then we started going after the criminal network that was in the Midwest. Grandma, mom, a couple brothers, several co-conspirators, and we end up using the grand jury and complaints on some and grand jury and indictments on these folks. But I was in federal court. Actually, I was about to go to a hearing, and I was all dressed up. And at that time, when I worked undercover, I didn't have any facial hair, nothing, clean cut. That was my undercover persona. Um, and I'm in a tie, and I'm with the U.S. attorney, assistant U.S. attorney that's prosecuting this investigation. And the one guy who came up, the two guys that came into the room, one of them didn't speak like English, and he was the enforcer. He was the one that was looking for the target earlier to kill him, and he was there as well. And he didn't speak very much at all. He just was kind of watching, and his job was protect everything from their aspect. And he comes out of a room with his attorney, and he looks up, and his eyes meet my eyes, and surely his attorney had to have told him that, hey, look, there was an undercover DA in this operation. But he was unwilling to believe this, because when he locked eyes with me and he saw me in the tie, he saw me with the assistant U.S. attorney. We had a conversation without our lips moving and without any actual speech coming out. I mean, we were talking to each other, and he basically was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm gonna effing kill you." And I'm like,
Wow.
welcome to federal court. So, but yeah, they get sentenced, and that was it. So fun case, end up working out really well.
Wow. Okay. So you were undercover in that situation with the hotel room. Are there did how often did you end up in a situation where you had to play a role that you
That's funny. When A&E was talking to me, they said, have you ever worked undercover before? Basically the same question. I said, yeah. And they're like, we kind of wanted a first time story. And I'm like, sorry, it wasn't the first. Now, and then they said, are you sure you've never worked undercover? And I guess they were getting me to want me to change the answer. And I didn't mind like changing some facts of the story, because it wasn't for court. It was for Hollywood, right? And I know they have to kind of massage these stories to reel the viewers in. But I'm like, no, I've worked undercover before. And then finally, the producer says, have you ever worked undercover against this level of traffickers, like low level cartel members? I'm like, no. And she's like, oh, first time you ever worked undercover, technically, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So if you watch it, it's funny, because in the show episode itself, I say that, and I'm good with that. But I had worked undercover, again, not at this level, so it was the first for this level. Most of the undercover roles I did were, and even this one, you slip in, you do it, and you slip right out. That was
so
pretty common.
never any
No,
long-term type roles. It was
no,
just
and
short.
those are
Okay.
pretty rare. Yeah, they happen.
Okay.
They happen, and there's some very notable ones, ATF, the motorcycle clubs, things like that. But no, m- all of the ones I were involved with were very short term, and then even the
So
ones
as
I
so as
meet.
a D so as a DEA agent, now putting you personally aside, as a DEA agent, a long-term role is not very common. Would you say that's a true
Correct.
statement?
Very
Okay.
rare.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so other alphabet agencies that would have a long-term role would be
There's some FBI, ATF. Really depends on the organization. ATF or FBI has a pretty robust program. Yeah, I mean, they're of course their job is well above Title 21, which is enforcing drug laws. I mean, they're doing, they got, I don't know, 100, 200 crimes that they're enforcing. So from terrorism to white
yeah.
collar crime, right?
So
So
do you
yeah,
think is there so as so the DEA has a case or is building a case. Is it possible you're in a situation where you think there will be this is going to need a long-term role to get the proper outcome that we want? Is it possible that do you then pass it on to another agency or bring another agency on board or how does that play?
yeah, we would work it. We have brought other agencies on board. We were working some cases down in South Texas where we were using HSI undercovers, and the role didn't require them living in an apartment or hanging out for 20 hours at a time in some bar somewhere or some biker club somewhere. But um, they were meeting with them so often that it was a long-term case, but not in the sense that you would see on TV. You know what I mean? Like where you got the cuts on and you're on the Harleys and you're riding
Yeah.
across the country. It could happen, certainly, and we could do that within DEA, but pretty rare.
I know this is going to sound like a dumb question. Does anybody in these agencies get acting uh, classes, like, in order to be able to do these things?
That's a good question. It's interesting. In the academy, as a basic agent, you get a little bit. In fact, they build scenarios into your training. So scenario one might be just talking. So they're gonna grade me on you and I. You're gonna be like they literally have actors. They work for both the FBI and the DA. And I'm not talking about like Brad Pitt level actors, but they are actors. And they'll be there's a persona. I mean they're being given a script. My name is Joe Blow, and and blah blah blah. And then so scenario one is let's just interaction. This isn't, maybe an informant introduced you and I together and we're just talking. And I got instructors all around me and they're watching it. Now the next one might be we're actually out in the community of, Stafford or Fredericksburg, somewhere near Quantico, and I have to meet you in the parking lot and do a fake drug deal, and along the way you're progressing. So yeah, you are getting a little bit of training. Um, there now is an undercover school at Quantico. We've had it before, and then because of funding, they've gone away with it. They've had it before, funding, and right now I think they're back on again, where they now have a. Other agencies have some pretty good schools. Probably don't want me to talk about them, so I won't. But uh, there's some pretty good training out there on how to deal with these situations. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. All right. I'm glad you said that it's true that you have some sort of acting thing. Okay. Well, I can't
Yeah.
even imagine. So, I mean, being okay. Now go over there and act like you're this person. You're like, I don't even. What? How do I?
Well,
Okay. So it's good.
a lot of it's just the interaction, like we're doing right now. I mean, that's just a lot of it's just how do you deal with people, right? And how do you and you
Yeah.
just have to lie about certain things, you know.
Yeah. How do you deal
Yeah,
with people, but be believable in in that role? I can imagine there's a lot of people that they just can't do that. That they seem robotic or they seem stiff. You know.
yeah, and you know what? And there are people that aren't cut out for it. And I don't mean that in a negative way. They'll tell you, like, there are people that just have no interest in it, and I worked for a supervisor, a second level supervisor once that thought every single person out there needs to work undercover before they promote promote. And I'm like, no. And he would send young agents. There was a department down in Texas that would work with them, and they put them in these vehicles and they go in these really bad areas and they would just try to buy dope. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is crazy dangerous. I'm glad it was never my team. I would never assist in an operation like that. Um, because that's when the robberies happen. That's when the shootings happen. I mean, I can't tell you how many multiple officers I know who have been in those situations. And I know a lot of those operations end up turning, they go very well, but they can go south pretty darn quick as well. Um, so yeah, there are people out there who have no interest and just really not cut out for it. And that's fine. That doesn't mean you're better. It's because I worked a little bit undercover doesn't mean I'm a better agent. I mean, maybe I was, I don't know, but you know, maybe I wasn't.
Okay. I'm sure you were great. Um, how about any situations where you've feared for your life?
That one I didn't. I knew that guy was a killer. He did not have a gun with him that day, which was interesting. The only gun in the room was mine. I was wearing a gun. Um, I it's not like you go in there all cavalier and cocky, and arrogant, but like I said, I felt really the risk management that we do. I mean, again, like I said earlier, things can go south. I get it. But we really worked scenarios out, not just in our head, but with our team and my team. I was so blessed and thankful to work with some amazing people that were just good. They understood the job. My first boss, he just knew the job really well, and then we just take care of each other, right? And so, I mean, there's an inherent danger in a situation like that. But and again, I truly don't mean this to sound cocky, but I didn't feel, you know what I mean? I felt comfortable in these situations, and thankfully we got the successful outcome. We all went home safe, and the bad guys went to jail.
That's great. So everybody obviously has seen maybe not everybody. Most people have seen Breaking Bad.
Great show.
DEA is obviously featured prominently in the show. Do you have any comments on that as to realism? What would be completely fake about the situation? I'm just curious of your thoughts.
Yeah, they did a good job. I think the first couple episodes when they first introduced, oh gosh, I forget his name now. Not Walter was the bad guy, and Jesse, but the brother-in-law, Frank, not Frank. Anyway,
Hank.
whatever his name was. Hank. There you go. I was close.
Hank
It
Schrader.
rhymes with Frank. Hank, how did I forget that? They did a really good job. The first couple episodes, there was a couple things that, we were all kind of like, but I don't know who they were. I don't think I ever met these guys, but apparently they did have some DEA folks on set as consultants working with the show at some point. I don't know if they had them there from the get-go there at some point. I mean, obviously it takes some Hollywood, the ability to be anywhere in 10 minutes and have all the resources and, it's just not real there. But yeah, I mean, some of the terminology and yeah, it was a good show. I really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite shows ever. That and The Wire on HBO are really well done.
Okay, so The Wire, you would say DEA's role in that was pretty well done?
Law enforcement. In fact, there were a lot of people, I can tell you, a lot of folks in law enforcement really pissed off at the time because they felt like they were giving away secrets, and of course, obviously there's some Hollywood and some politics thrown into it as well because it was, specific to Baltimore, which, oh goodness, if you've ever been to Baltimore. But yeah, I as far as realism, there's no show on TV that's ever talked about law enforcement from the drug enforcement perspective that's been more accurate than The Wire. They just did a season. They just did a phenomenal job. But yeah, I love Breaking Bad as well.
Interesting. Well, I have never gotten through The Wire. I keep getting stuck around episode 4 or 5. So, you make me more want to finish it up there. So I didn't realize it was that accurate. That's interesting.
I'll tell you a story. I've never talked about this case publicly. I had a case. Let me be careful on some of the facts. A trooper in the Midwest had made a stop that we were interested in, and he seized about $1 million cash on this traffic stop. And there was a guy involved in this traffic. There were multiple people in the vehicle, and there was a guy from out west, and he was a cocaine, predominantly cocaine, but also marijuana as well, trafficker. And he'd bring it in through like Nogales into Phoenix, and then just head east. And his distribution network was the East Coast, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, that area up there. And his cover was music producer, and he did have some up and coming rap artists working for him. A couple of them, in fact, had done some performances with some well-known performers. And he was using his drug proceeds to facilitate this business, this enterprise that he wanted to develop, this producing enterprise, right? Which is not uncommon at all. And The Wire was on at the time, and all the actors in The Wire were up and coming, right? Who's the main guy? Idris
Elba.
Yeah. Which, I mean, now, he probably commands millions of dollars, but at the time he was up and coming, right? Well, this particular guy, he had access to some of these actors in the Baltimore area, and he would pay them to come to nightclubs, and then patrons could take pictures, for, I don't know, let's say $30-$40, and he'd take his cut, and then he'd give the rest of it to the actor or actress. And so I learned about this, and at the time I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, are they involved in this? And so this case took so many different turns, but ultimately they were not involved at all. I want to make that real clear, but I didn't know it at the time. All I knew is that my bad guy, pretty high level bad guy, was associating with all these actors. And I didn't know at the time that they were taking pictures. I just knew they were together. So I'm like, what is going on here? Wouldn't that be something crazy? And we ended up getting hold of some folks at HBO, and I remember I was talking to one of the agents, and I was like, I need to talk to your client. And they're like, the last thing you're going to do is talk to my client. And I'm like, I'm going to need to talk to your client. I need to figure out why he is associating with this known bad guy. And they basically told me to pound sand. I was so upset. And I remember as soon as he hung up on me, and I got off the phone and I called the assistant U.S. attorney I was working with. And I'm like, we need to bring him to the grand jury. If he doesn't want to talk to me, let's force him to talk to me. We'll put him under oath, and we'll just give him immunity, and blah, blah, blah. Or we'll make him take the fifth, and thankfully the U.S. attorney, the assistant U.S. attorney he level-headed, because I was pretty upset being hung up on. And he was like, look, Brian, do your investigation. Let's figure this out. It's too early, figure it out, figure out why they're communicating, why they've been seen together. And that's exactly what I did. Level heads prevailed. I did my investigation and found out, like I said, that he was using them to go into nightclubs and take these pictures, and that bolstered his persona as a producer and someone who hangs out with celebrities. And but yeah, ultimately they weren't involved at all. So, but fun case. Multiple states. Did end up taking them down in California, Arizona, Maryland, and executing several warrants, and getting some more cash and a lot of dope, and putting some bad people in jail. So,
All right. Excellent. What's a secret, perhaps, or a tactic that drug traffickers use that most people don't know about?
some of the shippers, I've noticed something I'm working on right now with law enforcement. There's a lot of fragmentation or batch shipping. So we see the same thing I saw the same thing at the border. And what I mean by that is, at the border. So as opposed to a large load, which we would see as well, we would see a lot of small loads come through. And they're really kind of playing a statistic game, right? I mean, yeah, it'd be great to get one large load, let's say of 1,000 pounds. But let's say I have 10 loads of 100 pounds a piece. Well, the profit margins in drugs are so darn high. Like fentanyl, for instance, takes literally a couple pennies to produce this stuff, like pills and stuff like that. So, if I get 100, let's say 100 pounds of this stuff through, and all the other 9 vehicles get seized, I'm still making money here. I'm profitable, right? And we see the same thing in shipping. The folks that are shipping packages, they'll ship multiple packages. I think that's something that people don't think of. They use the holidays a lot. Again, that's from my time on the border. I remember the first Christmas I worked down there. My goodness, we were busy. So they're thinking, less people, more celebration, things like that. So they're always trying to figure out the logistics, the routes, make it a little bit more trickier, trying to learn, what law enforcement's doing and how they could, how they can adapt to that.
Okay. So you've served in some different locations. You've been in Corpus Christi, Little Rock, and I know it's Springfield. Which Springfield? There's a lot of them. Which state are
Missouri, Springfield, Missouri.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So between those different areas, how would you say drug trafficking differed?
Quite a bit. My first assignment was in Little Rock, and our area of responsibility was pretty much the entire state, except for the northwest corner. There was an office up in Fort Smith and Fayetteville and stuff, and we would assist them quite a bit. But for the rest of the state, and I don't know if you've ever been to Arkansas, but it's not a small state. I mean, from Texarkana to West Memphis or Jonesboro, that area. I mean, that's a hike. We worked a lot of. Well, I'll tell you this: we worked a lot of interdiction cases. We had a remarkable relationship with the Arkansas State Police, and we worked a ton of interdiction cases. So they would stop a vehicle with dope, and then once that seizure was made, we'd come in and we'd look at the vehicle, the phones, we'd interview the driver, we'd process the drugs, and then ultimately our job was to see if we could further the investigation. Where was the dope coming from? Where was it going? Who are the other co-conspirators? Because anyone let's face it, I could send anyone, literally anyone, to the location, pick up the drugs, and be done with it. I needed investigators. Again, where was it coming from? Who were they talking to? Coordinated this load. Where was it going to? So we did a lot of that. We did a lot of regional impact cases there, a lot of local impact cases there. These are people that live in those areas. Let's say they geographically live in Arkansas, and they're just high-level drug dealers, or have the ability to, not the ability, but have the connections, to bring in lots of dope. The interesting thing about Arkansas as well, I would say, is that we had a lot of drugs that would come from both like Southern California and Arizona, and then we also had a lot of drugs that would come up through South Texas. So the Mexico is controlled by a number of cartels, and depending on the territory and the plaza that it goes through, we could work cases that were Sinaloa cases. We could work cases that were Gulf Cartel or the Los Zetas cases. I mean, that was pretty cool. My second assignment was Corpus Christi, although most of our time was spent even a little further south, McAllen, Brownsville, those areas in the valley. And that's where I really learned a lot about the cartels and how they operate, because one of the things that we do, I think we do well at DEA, is we exploit communications. If you're a drug trafficker, you're talking to someone. I don't care if it's on an encrypted app. I don't care if it's on Xbox Live. I don't care if it's on a telephone. I mean, or text message. You got to have it's not that you can't say I want drugs or think that, and all of a sudden drugs pop up. There's communication. So we're always exploiting the communications, and we're always looking for those links. Deconflicting numbers, looking at intel, blah blah blah. One of the things that we really did well in South Texas, because we had to, is we would do the same thing, but we would really make these connections to high-level traffickers pretty darn quick, or within one or two telephones, which doesn't always happen in the middle of the country. So that was a different education. We worked a lot with the Border Patrol. Not only did we have our own investigations, but just like the troopers in Arkansas, if Border Patrol makes a seizure, they're not an investigative arm. We would take those cases. So the same thing. So we get a call, there's 1,000 pounds of coke. Again, I could send anyone down there and pick up the drugs and be done with it, but where did it come from? Is the person cooperating? What is his or her telephone telling us? Where is it going? Further the investigation. From there, I went to Quantico. I was in charge of most in-service training, started the Leadership and Development Training Unit, which is another passion of mine. I do a lot of leadership consulting and training. Love that. Did that for about 3.5, almost 4 years at Quantico. Learned a lot there. That was my only non-enforcement time. So again, we're not putting people in jail there. We're training, right? And in-service training is people that are come back to the academy for some type of advanced training. So, conspiracy, money laundering, leadership, whatever. And then my last 2 years, I went back out into the field in Springfield, Missouri. I know there's a lot of Springfields out there. I had an opportunity to come to Springfield and run the office. So I was what they call the resident agent in charge. I was the RAC. And I was in charge of the Springfield office and all the operations in the 25 counties in Southwest Missouri that are in our area of responsibility. A lot of local and regional impact cases, and always looking for links to the cartels. And at this time now, the Sinaloa cartel and the CJNG have really, they've been around for a long time, especially the Sinaloa, but we had an administrator, Ann Milgram, who came in right around the time, right before I retired, but probably a year. And her emphasis was really looking at those two cartels more so than the rest. And we were working harder to make those links. But so, in addition to the local and regional impact cases, a lot of cases from St. Louis, Chicago, a lot of dope, believe it or not, actually goes north of us, then comes right back down south. A lot of fentanyl, still some meth. But the emphasis really turned to fentanyl pretty quick. But yeah, so every office is a little different, really. And not only that, every office you work in, especially the bigger offices, you could be in a Chicago office and end up being on a financial team. So you're doing money drops with cartel members, or you're trying to launder their money or something like that. Um, I don't know if the offices still have them, but some of the offices used to have Title III teams. So, not only are you writing these Title III investigations, the wiretaps where you listen to the phones, you're out there on surveillance. Those are labor intensive cases. I mean, you just don't listen to a phone. You have to respond to everything the person's talking about, right? What if they say, hey, we're going to move 100 pounds of fentanyl, uh, 8 o'clock this morning. We're going to take it from Chicago to, St. Louis or whatever. Well, guess what? You're out there. You're doing surveillance, right? And you got to respond to that stuff. So yeah, it really just depends on where you are and and what the priorities of the agency are.
Do you think that there are criminals that understand a lot about DEA and investigative agencies to the point where they understand that what you just said, everything they talk about, we've got to follow up on? That if they thought they were under surveillance, they might start throwing out breadcrumbs in wrong directions and such just to waste your time?
100%. They call that counter surveillance. I saw that more in South Texas than I did in my other locations, but yeah, 100%. There are, well, first there's always a paranoia when you're a criminal. I don't care if you're in Walmart thinking about stealing a candy bar. What are you doing? You're looking around, right? You want to make sure that no one's watching you. Same thing on the drug trafficker level. I mean, is this guy a cop? Or is that person surveilling me? I mean, there's always this inherent paranoia that happens. So there are people that they'll do heat runs or dry runs or heat runs. They'll counter surveillance. So for instance, you're surveilling them, and then all of a sudden they're slowing down at a green light, and then as soon as it turns yellow, they take off. Hoping that it's going to be red as they're going through the intersection, and they want to see whether or not someone blows through it with them. Constantly making turns, going through parking lots. I pull through a Walmart parking lot and I exit the other side. I mean, I'm not giving out any trade secrets. A lot of bad guys do this type of stuff. Most of the time it's just because they're paranoid. Um, it's funny because when you arrest them or come later on, they'll be like, I knew the cops were watching us. They always 100% always say that, I knew you were undercover. And I'm like, okay, then why'd you sell me dope? Come on. Like, you didn't know. He duped you, you lost, get over it. Right. But as a matter of precaution, some of these folks will do it. And that's why, high level traffickers, or depending on their level of, as we get, let's just say, for instance, you're our target and you do that the first time I'm out watching you. Well, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop surveilling you because I don't want to burn this operation. And then I'm going to talk to our air wing or work with some of our counterparts, and I'm going to get a helicopter or a fixed airplane up there, and I'm going to watch you from up there. Or I'm going to ask the court to put a GPS device on your vehicle. And my probable cause is going to be that, you're blowing through red lights, that you're turning on through parking lots, So depending on what I know about you and what I learn about you, I'm going to adjust as well. But, back to your original question. Yeah, there are organizations out there that know this. I mean, especially at the cartel level, like we were saying, I mean, they adjust really, really well. I mean, they wear patches, for God's sakes. I mean, they got communication security teams. I mean, it's a $1 billion business. With this is Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk type money. But in a criminal enterprise. And so yeah, they adjust very well. In fact, they adjust a lot faster than us. I mean, for us, it's often a game of whack-a-mole, right? Because we have laws, we have morals, we have policies. We have to play by the rules. They don't. So yeah, they absolutely 100% conduct these operations in manners that make it more difficult for us sometimes.
All right, Brian, can you tell us about the war on drugs? Is there ever a moment when you question whether it's winnable or not? Can we win the war on drugs?
I don't like the word war. Uh, Psychologically, we're looking for a winner or a loser, and I don't think it's as black and white as that. I think there's a lot of a lot of gray, a lot of color in this. There's a lot of battles. I think we can't give up on what we're doing. We, like I said, we lose. Well, last year we lost 80,000 people to drugs in this country. So I think what we're doing is important, but I think we have to frame it more realistically. I know that war on drugs has been around since Nixon, I guess. I just don't like the term because it's like we're losing it. Well, that's one way to look at it, but how about all the drugs that we've seized, all the folks that are arrested? I mean, are there not some wins there as well? I go back to earlier what I was saying as well. I said ultimately, if we want to be successful, we have to reduce the demand. This truly is a supply and demand issue. As long as there is a appetite for drugs like we see in this country currently, there are people willing to put everything on the line to send drugs to the United States and profit from it. Period. Right? 4% of the world's population, yet we consume the most, and we just keep on making the problems worse. I mean, I haven't even mentioned the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, I can, if you want to talk about how fentanyl got on our drug supply, and you look at the history of opioids, I mean, the pharmaceutical industry is absolutely involved with how we changed pain management in the 1990s. And one of the emerging threats I'm looking at right now is stimulants like cocaine and methamphetamine. And I'm looking at what we're doing in the pharmaceutical industry with, the number one prescribed medicine for youth now is stimulants. ADHD, all the Adderall, all these things out there. I mean, we're at record levels. In fact, DEA just increased their quotas, allowing these manufacturers to make more and more of this stuff. Well, in the 1990s, when we allowed them to do that with opioids, people started turning to heroin. Literally heroin use quadrupled during this time period. And that's how fentanyl got on our drug supply. Well, now we're doing the exact same thing with stimulants. We're pushing these legal stimulants out to young people at record, unheard of levels. And what do you think they're already doing? They're turning to cocaine and methamphetamine at record levels. And now they're turning to a drug that has fentanyl in it, because we're seeing fentanyl in not only are we seeing it in our heroin, we're seeing it in our methamphetamine and our cocaine. So yeah, this is not time to stop. What's that?
So I'm sorry to interrupt. So Adderall is a form of methamphetamine. Is that right?
No, well, it's a stimulant, so it has the same properties, and it helps with the focus and things like that. And there are people out there who 100%, last thing you need or I need is, oh, my son needs Adderall, so stop with the hate mail. I get it. There's legitimate uses of it. But the problem is we're over prescribing it, in my opinion. That we have very loose guardrails on the pharmaceutical industry because they're such a powerful industry. And the more you look at the numbers over just the last 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, it's absurd. I mean, these charts, I mean, they're just off the chart now. I mean, they've just turned vertical. And the exact same thing happened in the 1990s when we released drugs like OxyContin with Purdue.
Yeah.
Opioids for everyone. You had your wisdom teeth taken out. You probably went home with 30, 60, 90 hydrocodone pills. No questions asked. I mean, you didn't even have to say you were in pain. You literally went home with that.
It was such a pendulum, though. I mean, the pendulum swings. I feel like this pendulum swings too hard. So if I go into the doctor now, or if I have an operation, which I had not too long ago, the chance of me getting a drug that actually is useful in getting rid of pain is virtually zero. Like, they don't want to give you anything at this point. And I'm like, I'm really in pain here. They're like, no, sorry, here, just take 3 Motrins. It's like,
you're
right?
You're absolutely right. The pendulum has shifted, and so you take that whole thing with opioids and pain management, right? And literally that same thing is happening with stimulants. And in 5, 6 years, you're going to have me on and we're going to talk about this. And I've been literally warning about this for years. I talk to a lot of reporters. I've done pieces with Fox, some other stations, CNN, News Nation. And when I talk to them offline, they're all like, "You got anything else?" I'm like, "Yeah, let me talk to you about this emerging drug threat." And they're all like, like they're just yawning because they have no interest. And they're all nice people. I'm not criticizing them. They're great people. I've been able to establish some really good relationships there with them, but it's not sexy. It hasn't happened yet. And I'm trying to peek around the corner to what the next threat is, and I'm not alone. But we've seen it. We saw it happen with opioids, and the exact same thing's happening now with
Okay.
the stimulants.
Okay. So they go and they say, we're going to give out less stimulants. We're going to give out less Adderall. What is going to be the long tail effect of that?
Well, with proper medical guidance and you have a good doctor is what I'm trying to say. It shouldn't be. There's alternatives. Some people are at high risk when we're giving them stimulants with almost kind of recklessly. Here you go. It's like it's literally same thing. Here, here's 30, 60, 90 pills. Here you go. Right now, we're the pendulum is on the other side. Like it was early on with the opioids, where we're flooding the market. So without us getting a hold of it, we're going to see the problem worsen because it's already starting to get worse with methamphetamine, cocaine seizures and use by young people. And then same thing's probably going to happen. We're going to be like, oh, look what happened. We need to time out. We need to put some guardrails on that. And then they're going to make it hard for people, just like you're saying. Now you have people who legitimately need some of these opioids and can't get them. It's because we went from 0 to 100 like that, and we're doing the same thing with the stimulants, and it's crazy, it's nuts, and like we literally see it happening, and that's what pisses me off is that we're putting profits in front of children, in front of public safety.
That's awful. Okay. We'll shift gears a bit here. Let's talk about cryptocurrency and the dark web. So you train people on that. Why don't you tell us about that? How are criminals using the technology?
Yeah, one thing we've noticed in law enforcement is, and I'm probably guilty of this as well, when you don't have a basic understanding of something, you try to avoid it, right? Go back to the opioids. I remember early on, we were seeing opioids flood the market, but we didn't really understand what was happening. We didn't know it was going to lead to more heroin use. So we weren't working these pill cases the way we probably should have. So now let's fast forward to cryptocurrency. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. I lost money. I called the police and they basically told me there's nothing they can do. And in some instances, they don't even take the report. And I'm like, shame on you. And there are some major, I'm not going to call them out on this call, but there are some major police departments who I know have literally refused to take the report because they don't think there's anything they can do. So we put together a cryptocurrency class, and it's really just a basic, hey, this is what it is. This is how criminals are using it. This is what you can do from the law enforcement perspective to investigate it and help your victims and maybe even retrieve some of this money. And it went well, but the problem was a lot of the investigators who took the class still didn't know how to respond to these calls, appropriately respond. So we went back to the drawing board, and now I have a class that really spills it out. I mean, literally step 1, step 2, step 3. I mean, we're really planning it out. And what we're telling folks in law enforcement is you can investigate these crimes. It's absolutely possible. There are everything. I don't know if you know anything about cryptocurrency, but like, for instance, Bitcoin is the most popular cryptocurrency out there. BTC is the ticker symbol. So every Bitcoin transaction, from the very first one, which we call the Genesis, the very first one to, if you and I were to exchange right now, is on what we call the blockchain. And all those transactions on blockchain are public. You don't have to have a warrant. You don't have to be a police officer. You literally just have to have an internet connection. They're all, you can go to an Explorer site and you can see these things. Well, now it doesn't say, our names. It doesn't say our addresses. It doesn't tell us, that I sent you money or you sent me money, but the transaction itself is there. So it's not completely anonymous. If you were going to sell me cocaine and I gave you $40,000 cash for it for a kilo, Well, unless there's a video or unless we cooperate or unless there's witnesses, then it's pretty anonymous with cash. With cryptocurrency, it's not. So because that blockchain transaction occurred, we just now have to figure out who X is, who sent it, and who Y is. Well, let's say, for instance, you lost money. Someone called you. They convinced you that you needed to send money to bail out grandson from jail, and you sent it. Well, on that transaction, we're going to see the transaction. You say you sent $10,000. There's $10,000 right there. We already know who X is. That's the victim. It's you. That's why you called the police. So now our job is to figure out who Y is. Well, there's some things we can do there. So every transaction, typically, not every, well, let me back up here. What we can do is we can look at that transaction and we can trace to where that money was sent to, where that cryptocurrency was sent to. And there is software out there. It's very, very expensive. There's a ton of companies, Chainalysis, for instance. And what they do is they look at that transaction on the blockchain and they try to tell you where the money went. And when I say that, I mean like what exchange it went to. So again, if you've ever dealt with cryptocurrency, you probably bought it on Coinbase or Robinhood or Gemini or something. Those are called exchanges. Well, exchanges operate like banks as far as legal speaking. If you and I right now were going to go to a bank and we wanted to open up an account, what do we have to have? We have to prove our identities, right? We can't just go in there and say, my name is Joe Schmo. Been using that name a lot today. Give us an account. No. It's not that simple. You have your driver's license, social security card, passport, whatever. The exchanges, same thing. Go online right now and go to Robinhood and try to set up an account. You can't just put in some fake name. They're going to verify you, right? And there's going to be a bank account, and there's laws. It's a Bank Secrecy Act. There's know your customer laws. So where I'm getting at with this is now you've called the police. You've lost money. Let's say $10,000 in this scam. We know you're the victim. We see the transaction on the blockchain, and the software has told, or the platforms like Chainalysis, and there's a bunch of them out there, tell us that, hey, the bad guy moved that money to Cash App. Well, now we're going to contact Cash App, and that's when we're going to do more of the legal process. And we're going to say, hey, who owns that account? And they're going to say, well, Brian Townsend owns this account, and he lives at 123 Main Street, and here's his IP logs and blah, blah, blah. So we're walking law enforcement through that process to tell them that, hey, look, there are some things you can do. Now, I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version. I mean, there's a lot of variables, a lot of things that happen, a lot of movement, a lot of, time is of essence on this stuff. But yeah, that's it. One of the things that we're seeing across the United States is these crypto ATMs. Oh my goodness. If you said right now, Brian, you're going to be president for the day, you can do anything you want. Well, guess what's going to be part of my list? It's going to get rid of these crypto ATMs. Who uses a crypto ATM? It just infuriates me. Crypto ATMs, they're predatory. Okay. Crypto ATMs charge incredibly high percentages to use. Sometimes 40, 50%. So that means that's a fee for using the machine. So let's say you and I are doing 100% legitimate business. You sell me a house and I'm going to buy it from you. And you say, oh, just send me the money via cryptocurrency. You'd be an idiot to say that, because as soon as I went to not cryptocurrency, but crypto ATM, because as soon as I went to the ATM, and let's say you're selling me a house for $100,000. I go to that crypto ATM and I put $100,000 in there. Guess what? The machine, the company, is going to keep $40,000 to $50,000, because 40 to 50% of that transaction, you're only going to get $50,000. So what legitimate business person would do that?
Nobody.
No one.
So therefore the companies who have the ATM machines, they know their customer, right? Their customer is someone who knows that is willing to pay a 40% fee. The only person willing to pay a 40% fee is someone who is trying to get money in not a legal fashion.
Or a victim. And that's why they'll tell you, especially old people, because you don't know that. All you know is, hey, your bank account's been compromised. We need you to go to your bank right now, take all your cash out, and go to this crypto ATM and put it in there, and we're gonna keep it safe for you. So yeah, they're paying a fee, but they don't care. They think they're doing something that's, that they're believing in this process. And the bad guy, yeah, he's not getting, let's say it was $100,000. He's only getting 50, but guess what? He's still got $50,000 of your money. He or she doesn't care, So who would agree to that? No one. I mean, and then the states that are regulated, Illinois, Missouri, you have to have a permit on these things. Oh, that's just a money grab for the state. Shame on these. Iowa has done a good job. Nebraska's done a good job. Minnesota, and there's a couple other states around the country that are starting to regulate these. What I hope
When
to
you say
see.
good job, are you saying we're not going to allow them in our state? Kind of a good job?
No, unfortunately, we haven't seen an outright ban, but what we have seen is we've seen restrictions on them. So, Illinois, Missouri, I could go to a machine and I can put whatever I want in it. So if you're the bad guy and you've convinced me to send you money, and of course I don't know you're a bad guy, but you've convinced me to send you money, I go to my bank, I withdraw $100,000 cash, and I go to this ATM. I could literally put the entire $100,000 into the machine and just wave it goodbye once I figure out that I've been scammed. In places like Iowa and Nebraska, they cap it. So I can only put $2,500 a day, which, yeah, $2,500 sucks if you're the victim to lose, but it's much better than
it's not going to ruin your life,
million or whatever else. So the states like I said, Missouri, Illinois, all they're doing is they're saying, hey, if you own one of these machines, you have to have a stamp on it so the state can make, $100, $200, $500. That's just a money grab. It doesn't help anything with consumers.
Yeah.
I would like to see more. Here's what I'd like to see. I had a mayor in my class, small town mayor, about a month ago. And she was asking me afterwards, she goes, can I do anything from the city's perspective? And I go, it's a good question. So I started researching it and I found a couple of places, I think was it Spokane or somewhere in Washington state, where the city passed an ordinance saying you can't have these things in our town. And I think that is brilliant. And I'm trying to work on some stuff right now to get that message out. If you have any influence with your city government, please, if you want to protect consumers, ban these things. Now, I know that the bad guys are just going to tell them to go to, neighboring cities. I get that. But the more cities can do this, and then maybe the states will jump onto this, I'd love to see the federal government do something. Senator Dick Durbin, he introduced a bill, but this is all lip service. Nothing against him or any of the other senators or congressmen, but that's what they do, right? They put it out there that they're going to protect consumers. Never sees the light of day. Never sees a vote. We need action. I'm telling you right now, mark my words. If we could eliminate crypto ATMs, the number of crypto scams would go down probably 90%. Now, the criminals are going to adjust because they always do, but this is a huge, huge problem, especially for our elderly. 65 and older are getting hit harder than anyone. I just saw one on the news last night where a lady was in a liquor store, had a crypto ATM, and somebody in there saw her feeding this machine money. And they went to her and they called the police, and they're like, ma'am, you need to stop. She says, no, my money's in danger. I need to put it in there. Like, she is psychologically invested in what she's doing. And thankfully they got her to stop and not hit send, because that money was going to go to a criminal, period. But this is what these criminals do. They prey on people, especially our elderly, and they use cryptocurrency and they use these crypto ATMs. And that's part of what we're doing, is we're educating people, primarily law enforcement, to let them know that, hey, this is what's happening and this is how you can investigate it.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Yeah.
So I am curious a little bit more about the cryptocurrency. So you said that you can kind of trace Bitcoin, right? So because of the ledger, but so certainly criminals, a halfway decent criminal probably understands this. So what are they doing to get around that type of stuff? I know there are other cryptocurrencies. I've heard of Monero, which allegedly has less of a trace to it. What,
Yeah,
can you speak about that stuff a little bit?
Yeah, so that, you're right. So what we're doing is we're getting the low hanging fruit. We're getting the criminals who, because if I steal money from you and it's in cryptocurrency, I can't do anything with that cryptocurrency, right? It's digital, right? Cryptocurrency is not tangible, right? It's virtual, it's digital. I can't go to Walmart and purchase stuff with cryptocurrency, right? I need to convert that to cash. And the way I do that is move it to an exchange. But literally what you said is correct. So the more sophisticated criminals, the more that, or people that realize that law enforcement can track that, they're looking at a variety of things, decentralized exchanges, peer-to-peer networks where, like, let's say I'm a launderer. I will launder your money for you. And this can get really technical. Tumblers, mixers. There's a lot of things going on here. But you're a criminal. You have $100,000. You're trying to figure out how to convert that to cash without law enforcement figuring out who you are. You contact me, peer-to-peer type laundering thing. I'm going to give you, $80,000. I'm going to take 20,000 for my fee, and I'm going to do some technical things. And this is where, oh my goodness, there's so many things you can do. And you mentioned Monero. Monero is what we call privacy coin. It's impossible to track. There are some things that we can do within the federal government to help with this process. But the code itself has been, and this can get really technical, but their blockchain, if you will, their public ledger, how it's written is so difficult. In fact, the IRS, I think it's still open, offered like a $600,000 or $700,000 reward for anyone that could crack that code for Monero.
Really?
But you know what? That's chump change. You crack that code, oh, yeah, you're going to be a billionaire. I mean, it's nuts. But yeah, you're right. There are ways criminals, they'll use mules. There's a ton of things that they'll do to try to not take it to an exchange that law enforcement can identify as belonging to them.
Okay, let me ask you about surveillance. You'd mentioned earlier about being able to sort of follow somebody, see where they're going. Uh, I've heard in the past, and I think this has only been in war zones. So I'm curious, there's concepts of where you can take satellite, where you record everything that happens in a city at a given moment, right? So where all the cars go, whatever. And then what they've been able to do is say, okay, well, this car came in and it did something. It blew something up, right? And so then they just go to the recordings and they rewind it and they see where it came from. Oh, it came from this house over in this address. Is there anything that is done in law enforcement to record what takes place in a city, let's say the city of Little Rock, where you could just rewind it and say, well, this is where they came from?
No, I'm certain that's probably happening within the, maybe CIA or somebody, one of those types of intelligence agencies, but no, not at DEA, FBI, HSI, not to my knowledge. That concept's been around for a long time. There's some issues there. I know, gosh, who was it? There was some case law with drones. There was a major city in the United States that was using drones to circle around their city 24/7 and to do exactly what you just said. Oh, there's been a crime at 123 Straight Main Street. Let's go back and rewind and see what happened, right? And I want to say that was challenged, a Fourth Amendment challenge, and the city lost. They couldn't do constant surveillance. So there are some legal issues with that in regards to the Fourth Amendment. I can tell you, and I'm not like lying or blowing smoke, we didn't have that ability at DEA. If we did, I didn't know about it. And, and I was a boss there. So, no, we didn't have that ability. Do I believe that ability exists? Yeah. I mean, I would assume that we're probably doing that with terrorist camps and, in places overseas where we're trying to protect, our interests when it comes to terrorism and threats to the United States. But as far as domestic law enforcement goes,
So where the
yeah.
Fourth Amendment wouldn't apply, then they can just go ahead and do this. It seems like it would be obviously quite effective, you know.
Yeah, and there are things we can do to work backwards, but to have that ability just to hit, stop, rewind, go back, very, very difficult. Or at least we don't have the technology available to us. And then I think if we did, there's going to definitely be some privacy concerns, and probably a lot of lawsuits by ACLU and other and other organizations. Which brings up another other thing. Privacy in this country is crazy. I get it. No one wants Uncle Sam, you know, but you know who has the most data on all of us? These things right here, these cell phones. I mean, if you got a cell phone in your pocket, you've given up all your data, all your apps, your computers. I mean, the digital footprint's almost a joke anymore. They don't just know where you are; they know everything about you, right? They know what you're likely to who you're likely to vote for, where you're likely to eat, where you're likely. They know your sexual preference. I mean, they know everything about you, and there's very little restriction on that. I mean, there really is. It's really an ethics thing, and these companies they're targeting their marketing and their advertising. Government can't collect that stuff. There's even intelligence centers. I mean, there's rules on that 28 CFR. I mean, you can't just have an Intel database and leave it there forever. I mean, you got to scrub these things, and if you want to run someone in the system, there's an audit trail. I can't go to a DEA computer and run Taylor Swift because I want to know where she lives. I would lose my job over that. But if I worked for Google all day long, I could do that. And no one seems to give a damn. So, and it's funny because the government actually has to buy this technology or buy the results of this technology in their investigations.
So
Literally.
you say Google knows everything about me. The DEA could go to Google or using this technology say, okay, now tell me the profile or.
Yeah, I mean, what they'll do is they'll figure out ways to use the data that they've learned about you to make money on it. Whether that's, I own a company and I'm looking for potential customers, and you maybe meet the mold or the profile of my typical customer. And there's certain things that the DEA or law enforcement in general could go to these companies and say, hey, we need this type of data. But some of these companies push back on it, which is funny because they're willing to sell it to, let's say you wear glasses and I need to know everyone who wears glasses in a certain zip code. Well, I'm not going to send an advertisement out to every single person in the zip code. I want to narrow it down to people who, let's say, bought contact solution, or you know what I mean. I want to narrow my focus down to what it needs to be, so I can be more efficient. And that's why they do that. I mean, taking Google for instance, Google doesn't sell a product; they sell information. They're $1 billion company. They make nothing. They sell data, and they sell that data to whoever who needs it. And Apple does the same. They all do the same. And they'll hide behind we care about our customers and we care about privacy. Bullshit. They care about money. And I'm not faulting them. They're businesses. That's what they do. They make money, right? They got shareholders. I get it. But when everyone always says, we don't want the government doing this and this and this is all happening. You have ad blockers, you have data brokers. I mean, if you're in a travel club, I mean, I travel quite a bit, American Airlines, American Airlines knows my schedule because I've flown, 80, 90 times with them this year. Right. So they know where I'm going. Right. My hotel, they know, and then they look at my browsing habits. I mean, this is common. Right. And we do that. We not only do we give that information away, we pay to give it away, right? Your internet service provider, do they give you your internet for free? No, you pay for that, right? So when you sign that little dotted line and no one reads that stuff, you're literally give all the apps on your telephone, every single one. I mean, look at what's the one that Trump came out against, the social media platform, TikTok. We were warning against TikTok before Trump said anything, but Trump's so divisive. As soon as he said, "Oh, TikTok's bad, we need to get rid of it," people were like, "Let's download it and put it on our phone now," because the bad man said it was a bad app, right? And because we're so divisive. But they had a keylogger. A keylogger literally traps or records every single stroke that you type on your phone. I'm not talking about within their app. I'm talking about on the phone itself. So, I mean, if you're talking to, I don't know, a mistress, if you're talking to, a password, I mean, anything you're doing on your phone, they literally have access to. I mean, the Chinese.
Wait. You're telling me TikTok, if it's
At one
installed on your
time.
phone, currently or in the past, TikTok has a keylogger for whatever you do on your phone?
In the past, I don't know if they still do. I haven't really paid attention, but in the past, they've had all types of really crappy stuff attached to their app. And as soon as you downloaded that app and you gave them permission to be on their phone, they had access to all of it, everything.
That's bonkers.
And that's why the intelligence community, this was, I don't know, I'm going to guess on the time period, 2018, 2017. Literally, I mean, they were telling everyone at DOD or DOW, whatever you call it now, DOJ, they were telling all of us, do not download this app. And a lot of these apps do the same. Well, maybe not that bad. TikTok was probably one of the worst, but the point is a lot of these apps are taking a lot of data, and they work with the data brokers are combining your online and your offline profile, and they're putting it together, and they create really precise footprints of who you are, what you do, and what you're likely to do, and where you're likely to spend your money.
All right, let's change it up a bit. Your job has probably affected your ability to have relationships with people outside of that job, or did it not? How has it affected your trust, or what do you got?
You know, yes and no. I mean, depending on the environment where I am, you have to be careful about what you say. Like, if I'm at an event or a party and someone says, "What do you do for a living?" Probably not going to just, "Yeah, I was a DEA special agent." I mean, kind of try to get a understanding, a grasp of who I'm talking to. And I'm one of those people. I'm more willing to. Now I'm retired. It's easy, but I'm more willing to give you a little more slack, a little more trust. But I also feel like I'm a pretty good judge of character. So it's the environment, right? It's the conditions. So yeah, there are times when I was sitting on an airplane years ago, and I'm pretty confident that I was sitting next to a drug trafficker, like high level drug trafficker from El Paso, and he started talking, and then finally it got to, "What do you do for a living?" And we all have, uh, fake things we say, and of course I gave him something really boring, and of course he didn't want to talk about my job anymore. He wanted to talk about more about what he's doing. I think he was trying to recruit me to be a driver. Didn't work
Really?
out though, but yeah, it really just depends on the conditions, and so I like to trust people. I like to give them benefit of the doubt. Um, so I'm more apt to talk freely about that. Another thing I tell, especially young people who are interested in a career like this, is try to find people who aren't in your line of profession. I think that's healthy. Any profession for that matter, is finding that balance. And it was really kind of by accident, but I didn't want every single conversation to be about work. I wanted to disconnect when I was not doing this job. Not I'm talking about retired, but I'm talking about when I went home, I really wanted to disconnect. So a lot of my friends, now, of course, when they figure out what you do, they want to know the war stories. They want to hear all the cool stories, right? But uh, I know folks in law enforcement who this is it. I mean, they literally, all their buddies, everything, and I don't think that's healthy. I really don't think that's mentally healthy. And when those people do end up walking away from this career and retiring, and this is all they have, and this is their entire, that's not good mentally.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about your podcast. You have only 2 milligram inside the crisis. And so I'm curious about that podcast, but I'm also curious about, I know we touched on the fentanyl before, but maybe what are some more things people need to understand about the fentanyl crisis?
Yeah, so it started with a nonprofit. So when I retired from DEA in 2022, I went to work for an agency that I still work for. It's called it's a mouthful. It's called the Midwest Organized Crime Information Center, MOCIC. And my job with them is law enforcement training coordinator. And I work with law enforcement in 9 states in the Midwest, basically Missouri, Kansas, and Illinois, all the way up to Canada. So those 9 states right there. So I travel throughout the United States quite a bit, but I travel in that 9 state region a lot. And because of my background with DEA, I was asked to develop a lot of drug specific curriculum. So I had developed a class on opioids, specifically illicit fentanyl, and it just took off. It really just took off. And end up doing it quite a bit. I started it in October of 2022. I did one in October, November, and December. And then in 2023, I mean, it just grew tentacles. And then in 2024, late 2023 or early 2024, I was talking to some colleagues, some retired DEA agents that good friends of mine, and I thought, I think there's something here more. Let's start a nonprofit. They're like, oh, okay. So I started a nonprofit in early 2024, and traveled, I think, 54 presentations that year. And in 2025, we still haven't got the funding that I need because traveling is expensive. And I pay for a lot of this out of pocket, but I can't do that forever. So one of the things that we made a decision on was I'm still going to travel as much as I can and look for sources of funding, grants, donations, blah, blah, blah. But we need to figure out other ways to amplify our voice. And as you can probably tell, I like to talk. And uh, so we made a decision to start a podcast called Inside the Crisis and to tackle this issue from many different issues. Only have, I don't know, 5-6 episodes out, not a lot of viewers yet, but really enjoy talking to people and getting different perspectives. I was actually speaking at a conference a couple days ago in Bettendorf, Iowa, and my Uber driver was a kid. I say kid, he was in his early 20s, and we started talking. And of course, I wasn't going to volunteer what I do or what I did in life, but if you've never been to Bettendorf, Iowa, Iowa, it's in an area they call the Quad Cities. You have Moline, Illinois, and Iowa, like right there, right? And there's actually 5, Davenport, Iowa, that area right there. Well, he told me he lived in Moline, which is Illinois. And I go, man, I have to imagine that living in Illinois is probably a lot more expensive tax-wise than living in Iowa. And you're right there at the river. Why wouldn't you? And he was from Iowa. And he says, well, I live there because the marijuana laws are more relaxed there and I can smoke marijuana there. And I thought, so we started talking and back and forth. And I said, I just want to let you know I'm a retired DEA agent. It was funny, his reaction to stuff. And we just hit it off, right? And now I'm gonna try to bring him on the show and do an interview. And it was because he talked about the fact that he's been using marijuana pretty much every day since he was 16 years old, and how's that impacting him? How's it impacting his life? So I'm really trying to tackle drugs from many, many, many different perspectives. It's new, like I said. Hopefully, it'll continue on. I love talking to people and trying to figure out, what's the crisis look like? What are people doing? And what can we learn from it?
Yeah. What platforms would someone find the podcast on?
YouTube and Spotify are the main two. On YouTube, I'm actually, one of the things that the executive director for Only 2MG, she's awesome. She really believes in what we're doing. She's the only person involved in the organization. It's not prior law enforcement. She actually owns a PR and media relations firm, and doing a lot of pro bono work for us because she really believed in what we're doing, right? And she's the reason why I've really gotten in front of, the podcasts. I think I'm up to 50 now. Fox, CNN, all these things. Well, she really was like, look, Brian, you need to start putting more stuff on video, and so the YouTube Inside the Crisis on YouTube is the name of it. Inside the crisis. You'll slowly see more videos than just the podcast on there. I talk about marijuana. I talk about some cryptocurrency. Not only her, but there are other people that are involved in this operation. They're like, you need to just keep on putting content out there, right? Content. If you want to build your brand and your influence, then you got to put this stuff out there all the time. The problem is I'm so damn busy and I don't know if I'm good at this, So, but I'm trying,
Fantastic.
And I'm trying, and so I appreciate it. We're one step at a time, right? Trying to move the needle a little bit.
Yeah. Well, hey, Brian, I appreciate you coming on the show. This has undoubtedly been very enlightening and educational and long. This is by far the longest episode we have on here. I already know we're going to put this in 2 parts. I've been thinking about it as we were talking, like there's no way this can run as one episode, but that's cool. I think it's been excellent. I hope it's been all right for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like this was a conversation. Appreciate the opportunity. I love the questions that you gave me, and hopefully, folks listening will enjoy it as well and continue to listen.
I know they'll enjoy it. All right, Brian, take it easy. Appreciate it, and I'll be in touch with you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
That was Brian Townsend, former DEA agent. Hope you learned a lot about the DEA. I certainly did. Hey, and if you enjoyed this content, even with me having the flu, please like and subscribe and leave a comment down below and let us know what you think. And if you have an interesting job and you would like to be on the show, then email me at talesfromtheshiftpodcast@gmail.com. I'll see about getting you on here.